Okay, I'm sitting outside, and there's a little bit of traffic noise in the background. I hope that's not too irritating. Um, the what we're going to do now is take this for the famous April Fool's Day circular reference class, where they made me go crazy because of a circular reference that they purposely put in the file. Fantastic. We're going to take this, or what we did already is essentially take this file that I've called, it used to be called the Revolver case, and now it's called the standalone case, and we're going to put a summary. Now, part of the summary, we'll put some we'll see how much we paid, and then we'll see what kind of holding period we have, and then we'll put an exit, and then we'll put some financing, and then we'll put some assumptions in here. Over here, we'll put some operating assumptions. And finally, the key thing, the key output, will be taking the sources and uses of funds statement that we made. Okay, I think we need to repeat that and put it somewhere. Okay, of course. Oh, shit. Okay, and after we put this in, excuse me, after we put all these in, then we're going to right next to it, put the IRR. And what we want to do is put things like the EBITDA scenario, and then maybe also the margins, because that will be a big one, and accounts receivable days scenario. Although I don't know, we might have to put another little function in here, but we want to get the IRR. If you really fancy, you could get the IRR in real terms and nominal terms. And eventually we're going to put a little spinner box on the margin and see what level of margin it takes for the IRR on the subordinated debt to get below its nominal IRR and all that. Okay? And what happens if we pay more for the company? What happens to our equity IRR? So we can put over here a spinner button around our entry EBITDA, see what happens here. And finally, I think what is helpful, a graph, a break-even graph, which will show you it'll take a data table and show you just what the break-even point is before which the senior debt and the subordinated don't get their IRR, how high the margin has to be, for example, before the IRR on equity is greater than the IRR on the sub-debt, and it allows you to really kind of see the risks. So that's the thing I feel very guilty in this class that we didn't finish. I hope you're hearing me okay. My 5 minutes of the video now. I'm gonna switch the video off when I make the little spinner buttons and all that crap. But let's review the transaction assumptions. Maybe we'll put that right here. It certainly should be before the LBO model. So the first thing is we had a very flexible transaction business, and I think probably we put the days. Okay. Now I'm not gonna. We could put this with a drop-down box or something too. Okay. Okay, but the key on here was we could put different transaction dates. Remember, shift control 3. And then we said, okay, well, the first kind of thing we're gonna put here is how much are we paying in terms of the EBITDA. Now you could say, well, the enterprise value is the value of the company with no debt and no cash. Okay, if you want to say differently, and we're going to put a spinner button around this one. How about this? I'm not going to do it right now, but you can, obviously we'll go to, I say obvious, but we'll go to the one and then the other. Now the next thing we did was we found if from this transaction we used the match function to find the column number, and then this was a pain, trailing EBITDA with offset. Now I have no idea. I shouldn't say it like that. I wonder if we could use some kind of sum if, like James suggested. And then once we have the trailing EBITDA, then we have the enterprise value. Okay, and then let's put the capital structure, existing capital structure. Okay. And then now our equity consideration here, equity, how about I'll put equity value with cash. Now this is what we were kind of doing, so that's the equity, and then the book value okay, is this. So after we have that, we could compute some, why don't we call we call this transaction, and let's also compute the PE ratio. Now if we pretend that they had an existing share price, we pretend that we could also then put the premium. Okay. for the transaction. Okay, so we should probably circle a couple of these. Okay, and to get the PE ratio, we need the earnings. Now, we'll have to do the same thing. Let's just practice that. So what we do is we put offset, sum of the offsets of index, oh shit, of the earnings that we had in our standalone case. We go down to the standalone case. Okay, we have the net income on our books, shift spacebar, and then you go to the transaction assumptions and find our famous column number. Okay, so this gives you the starting point. We keep it on the same row and go -3 back and have 1 and 4. I hope I did this, and this gives the earnings for the last period. And then if we take our equity value divided by the earnings, then we get our PE ratio, which is transaction. So it's similar to it's not very different from the EV to EBITDA ratio and all that. And let's pretend our existing price, this is, well, let's say we have one existing market, how about capital? A day before. So let's pretend that's, how about 1/8? That's shift control C, of course, to get that's going to be just an assumption we put in. And so our premium paid is this divided by this. Okay, -1. So, and here's what I really want to be saying with this. We could have started with the premium paid and done a whole this analysis like this. We could have started with the EV to EBITDA. We could have put a share exchange ratio in here. All of these kind of things. I'm not putting shares right now. And I doubt I'll even make another video with shares. You can look at about 20 of the other files on this to get that, okay? So why don't we call this transaction multiples and premium. I'm going to repeat myself now. We could start with anything and compute the implied EV to EBITDA ratio instead. We could have started with the premium and the existing price, add back the debts, subtract the cash, get the implied enterprise value, blah, blah, blah. Okay? And then I think what we really need to do is put the final, let's put the equity consideration without cash. That's how much we're going to pay them if we don't. How about cash taken out? So let's just put that as an input. Let's say they take out 28 of cash. And then our equity consideration without the cash, we take away the 28 that they've taken away. Now, you could argue, oh, should we, if this is the current price, that includes the cash, so we shouldn't adjust the current price. If this is the earnings, it includes a little bit of interest income on the cash, so we should be using this one, not this one. Okay, and then the other, I guess we should put this over here. Okay. And then we have some exit proceeds assumptions, which are going to be really big. We need a holding period to make it all flexible, and then we might want a whole bunch of different cost savings / synergies. And for this one, why don't we, I think what you probably should do is put a base case and no synergy case, a high case, and some people argue there are negative synergies. Now, one of the negative synergies could be that we lose our tax carry forward, but there can be negative synergies because all the competitors start coming in and saying, "Oh, this merged company sucks. We gotta compete better with them. We're gonna go use this as an opportunity to get rid of their business." High synergy case. Let's just make it 12, 15, 19. We talked about this, so we'll in a negative synergy case, we'll just say it takes a lot more money than we thought to start fixing the company. It takes some more time, and then we don't even get anything when we're all finished with it. Of course, you would then put the index function here with the, if you have this horrible conditional form. This is not even conditional formatting, is it? Excuse me. Now, so let's then on the senior debt we have some financing, and remember what we did. We put a little true false, opposite of true is false, and we put a little different repayment type. Now, on this one, in the LBO model, when we're going to transfer all this, I haven't put that in yet, so that's one of the subjects we'll talk about. Okay. Now this is the existing. Oh yeah, this is what happened. Oh, that's our starting profile. Excuse me. So what we did is we go through this, and then I also made a very big mess of this lookup function for the cash sweep. So if we have and we have to be, I should be much more careful about documenting this. Okay, so this is from to, and we have to discuss, should we take the from or the to in our analysis. And I think I took the to, and I should have taken the from. Then we have some subordinated debt amount, and I learned that we don't have any fees with that. The tenor is kind of irrelevant. That's going to be paid when we exit the thing. Now, on the revolver, that's really associated with senior debt. So let's move it. Okay, and now I'm going to have another stupid thing there, but okay, so this is the revolver. We have an amount. Okay. And then we can put okay, and we want to put different subordinated debt amounts and senior debt amounts and see how that affects our whole transaction. And I suppose we can put one other thing. Let's put dividends before say exits, and we'll put false. And if we do that, there's going to be a little bit of a trick, not a trick, but we're going to accumulate cash. And maybe, if the debt to EBITDA gets low enough, you'd really allow the debt of it. Okay? Now, when we do a consideration, this consideration should be the consideration. We put the condition with the cash, and then we used 28 million of the cash. Okay, and on this uses and sources, I also think we should put here. Let's put to EBITDA. So this is going to be senior debt to EBITDA, subordinated debt to EBITDA, equity to EBITDA, and the total will be is it really EV to EBITDA? I'm not sure. Okay, consideration. I think we should put some down here, some transaction multiples. I hate that I get so confused with all this taking the cash out of the business. Okay, but whatever. Everybody in the class was so much better. I was kind of feeling guilty. Okay, and then we have our total uses and our total sources. Now, when we put a nice little true false thing, beautiful. Maybe I'm going to put it here. Okay, and what we did is just said the equity is the remainder. Now let's make it really a much more leveraged a buyout. So I think we should make that Revolver 400. Hang on, not the Revolver. Junior debt 300. Is that okay? And less amount of equity, and the reason we had to retire quite a bunch of debt because they had the old revolving debt. That's why maybe let's put 350 debts. Then we get a really low equity, and I think what we should do is also put a percentage here. I keep saying which is kind of absurd, but if the percentage of equity is really small, you can say they don't have any skin in the game and get into all these kind of things. Okay, so that's our transaction assumptions. And and then here's just to review what we did. We put a couple of accounting adjustments in, and then we made our nice little pro forma balance sheet. And on our pro forma balance sheet, okay. Just a sec. Oh, I have to put this a minus. You have to take it straight from the sources and uses of funds statement. Okay? That fixed it. Okay? That is a very good illustration of what you have to do. Everything in the pro forma kind of adjustment comes from one of those sheets. Now, we're going to wrap the text in it as okay. Okay, and so this is what we're going to use in our other model. Okay, even though the primary things we really need from these are the amount of debt we have outstanding, and if we had any existing debt, we'd have to include that. And what we need to do then is on all the financing, we have the senior debt, revolving, defaulted debt, cash balance. We have to kind of work through the whole thing really carefully. Okay, and the net goodwill we had, that was really important. Well, it wasn't actually that important, but that made our balance sheet balance essentially. And to do that, you take the consideration you're paying, you take away the existing equity that's on the balance sheet down here. That goes away. That's replaced by the new equity that's put in the balance sheet. Okay. And then we have our assumptions. Okay, and I'm going to take a minute now and put the spinner boxes in and kind of do a little bit of our summary work here, and then we're going to move over to this LBO model and be a little more careful, take it all, put it all together, and finally we'll make this LBO model into one of these models where you can look at the monthly and or the quarterly and the annual numbers. Okay, so just let me take a break here. Okay, now that took a hell of a long time. Here's what we're going to have. We're going to put a different EBITDA multiple in, which it's just a spinner button, a different holding period. Whoops. I got that one wrong. That's the exit EBITDA. Oops, I got these ones mixed up. So fix that later. Who gives a shit right now? Okay, and then we'll put different synergy cases in, a different EBITDA scenario for the, I'll call this standalone operating assumptions. Okay. And can I just look at that case? Now, I put a spinner box on the final AR days collection. I put a spinner box on the cost of goods sold assumption. And I put at the very bottom, went to the very bottom here, and it looks like the thing's going slowly, but who cares really? I put, after we balanced our balance sheet successfully, not right away, I put the no plat or PAT or whatever you want to call it, and the return on invested capital. So, you know, this is what I kept emphasizing is a really way to look at the models, and I hadn't really done it in our model. So we can take that return on invested capital. I might even, and I don't know where it's going to appear, we can put it on our summary sheet. Okay. Now, so we can get a sense of the realism, I guess, of our things. Again, please don't let me waste time on this kind of crap. We can change the margin, and that's what we're going to really do is when we push the margin down, the ROIC goes way down, okay? Now, what I have to do is make absolutely sure that we just have for our EBITDA, just have a base case EBITDA, okay? So I'm gonna, here, I don't want this valuation and all these changing when we change our margin assumptions, so we'll only change it prospectively, okay? All right, and I have to kind of make sure that we do our variation only on the future. Okay, I've got to think about that. I'm going to have to make a little changes in the model. We'll only these we might have to take kind of a base case for this initial EBITDA. We might have to kind of force that in, and then our balance sheet too. I might have to copy and paste that. But that was just mumbling. Okay, so then we have this done. We have all of our kind of multiples done. If we put difference amount of debt in the transaction, we can see what happens to the debt to EBITDA ratios. If we put our different entry multiple, we get different premiums that we're paying, different implied PE ratios, different implied EV to EBITDA ratios, and somewhere here we're going to put our key graph, and the graph is going to say what happens to this whole thing when I lower the margin. What's my break even? What's my break even EV to EBITDA ratio? What's my break even? What's my break even IRRs? So we have to fill in the IRRs here and then do an analysis right here of the IRRs. And then I think we'll have a lot of information on our summary sheet. So in our pro forma sheet, all I did was add a couple of the spinner buttons. And now let's go to the LBO model. And this is what in the class I did it really, really quickly. And let's just review a couple of things. Now, if we would press shift control right arrow, shift control down arrow a bunch of times, you could almost go to the end of the sheet really if you want. I don't think that if you would go to the end of the sheet, it would take any more space in Excel. Some people might dispute me on this because I read it on the internet, and then if you want to make a conditional formatting, remember we'd go to new rule, and let's just make a format just of our holding period. So the rule was you have to go up to the top, and then you go back over to the side, and then you click on just when it's the holding period, and you press the F4 button and just get only the row number and put when it's true. And then I suggest getting a really light little color here. So don't get something too dark. Is this gray? Is this? I think this is. This might be too light. How's that? How about we make a very light green? Okay, and then we might even want to do while we're here. Why don't we press the conditional formatting again? And there was an error in the model from the class because the exit multiple wasn't right. I thought we had fixed that, but in the one I got, it wasn't fixed. And then put that equal true. Now, there's kind of what happens if you have two conditional formattings. I really don't know. I think it's the last one that takes priority, or it's kind of like a picture, which, you put your picture in front and back. So if you do it second, it goes here. And if you go to the conditional formatting rules, I think rules apply in order. So this apparently goes after the other one. So you apparently could change it back and switch it around. Now, okay, let's go through here. So this was our transaction date. This is the transaction date plus 1. EO month to get to the end of the quarter. We just count the quarters so we can count how old our transaction is in quarters. We can put the year, which is round up of the quarter divided by 3. There would be 5 other ways to do that. Okay, we need the year. Perhaps I forgot why we need the year. Oh, for our synergies. We put synergies in by year. And then we have a holding period as long as this is less than 24. Now, so this is our 6, so let's make it 5, and then it's 20, and we just have a flexible model. Okay, and then we get our pro forma balance sheet from the other sheet, and we get our operating analysis. Now, the only thing, well, no, I'm not going to even talk about what I'm worried about here now. And this one, I should have multiplied this by the holding period. Okay, Shift Control R. And shit, this just pisses the hell out of me that this conditional formatting does that. But we'll just go and fix that conditional formatting at the end. I'll show you how to do that. So all of these ones should have been multiplied by the holding period, and all of these ones were the index function except for this one, which was the synergies, which I looked up on the year. But all of these we should multiply by the holding period. Okay, I hope I did that last one okay. All right. If you maybe it would be kind of okay to copy this synergy little thing and put it here. This Wall Street training or some bullshit. They say, oh, no, you're not allowed to use the spinner boxes. Why not? They help in things like this. Now, to get the exit proceeds, I made another one, because what we need to do here is get the trailing EBITDA, and we have to do that for the prior 4 periods. So all we can do is put equal sum of the EBITDA 1, 2, 3, 4 now. That's not going to be the holding period. That's not going to be an exit period now. So I did that wrong in the last time. And then we can take our exit multiple, press F4, multiply that by the trailing EBITDA, and multiply that by the exit period. I think I did that okay. Okay, so I did that a little badly last time. Now, by the way, when you go to the Home tab, and you go to this conditional formatting, and you go to that's current selection. Go to Home, manage the rules, okay, and it puts this funky thing. It cuts it all away, and what we're going to have to do is just make that for the whole thing, so I think, can you do this? Maybe that's the solution. Just go to the dot here and just take it away like that. Okay, of course that's going to apply that rule. I think that's all we have to do, and press OK. Maybe I was thinking about making some kind of automatic macro that would do that for us. Okay, so that's and it didn't work. Oh shit! Why didn't it work? Maybe I was on the current selection or something. Okay. Then we have our senior debt, and the rule is to get this initial senior debt from the balance sheet. And the opening balance is less than the closing balance, and then we'll have a little bit of a problem with the cash flow sweep, and we also have a problem with the scheduled payment. So here's my suggestion. If you have 2 different options for the scheduled repayment, okay, we have a linear repayment and annuity repayment. Now, I don't think it would make a big deal. And then we can put repayment applied. Now we put a little true false switch in the transaction assumptions. Okay, so you go to the transaction model and the transaction assumptions, and you. Why don't we use this little true? In fact, let's do something I've never done before. We'll put the true up here, and then we'll copy that down. Now this, for some reason, when it copies, I should know why it does this, and I don't. I'm admitting I don't know. There must be an obvious reason. So what we can do is just choose one of the two, okay, and then on this linear repayment, where's our repayment? We have a term of 5 years. If that doesn't match the holding period, we'd have some real refinancing problems. And I am not putting refinancing in this model yet. Okay, and what I meant by yet, I'm never going to do that. In fact, I'm going to cheat, and I hope you don't get really mad at this, but I'm going to make the holding period equal to our repayment period, which is, I probably should have done it the other way around. So the linear repayment is we take the closing balance, we simply take the closing balance. Well, I'm going to do something even differently. Let's put the repayment switch. You know, you could, I don't know what there's a different philosophy on this, I guess. And we can then take this quarter, and whenever this quarter is less than or equal to this one, we can just make it true. Okay, I think that's probably a nice little way to do it. And then we can take the total debt we have outstanding either way, press F4, divide that by this one, F4 again, and multiply it by the true. That's going to be our linear repayment. Now we luckily kept the interest rate the same, so we can put PPMT. Now Claire had to put this in Dutch. I have no idea what that is in Dutch. As long as when that rate isn't the same, we have a little bit of a problem. But then we can assign this to the quarter up here, the period, and then you press the F4. So I think the idea is to try to get everything as much as you can together. And if we want to state this as a positive number, you have to put a minus sign on the NPV. Maybe you don't. And then you can also put an if statement and go up to the true and put a comma. And oh no. Interest rate? Why is that 0? Oh, it's just because it's really going slowly now, so it's not really 0. Okay, and then again, if you for some reason don't like these falses, I kind of like them, but if you don't really like them, then you just multiply that by the 1. Okay, and now when we have our scheduled debt, here's what should happen. Now I think we should I'm going to start putting all these as a negatives, and I'm going to, we haven't finished this up yet. So the repayment applied is if we just go up to this true, press F4, then we take this one, otherwise we take this one. Okay, so we can make the model flexible like that. Okay, and then let's see what we have for the scheduled repayment. We just put, how about, and then I have this long formula which we don't need anymore. You just put a minus here, but here's the problem. I'm so used to using the minimum and maximum up here. We're going to do this differently. We're going to put right here. I'm going to go down here. We would never pay more than the opening balance. You can tell maybe I've never done this before. So down here for the scheduled repayment, I'm going to put a minus on the repayment that we applied, okay? And this is going to be a consistent with what we've been doing otherwise, so I'm leaving it as a minus number. But then it's going to also be, but that can be we put a minus here, and then right here after the minus, we put a minimum of the opening balance. So we make sure that we never pay off more than the opening balance. And the reason that's an issue is because if we have a cash sweep, now let's wait. And then let's do the kind of be consistent on this whole thing. So virtually every little thing down here will then come from the down at the bottom. It will come from the cash flow statement, okay? So we put this in, and then right here I have the cash sweep. That's a big issue, but for now we can just press alternate equal, and we can make sure that this eventually, oops, now what I didn't do is I didn't copy it somewhere here. Did I copy this? I didn't copy that. So we have some cash sweeps in some years, and then we paid off all our debt way earlier than, because of the cash sweeps, we paid off our debt. How much did we have in the cash sweep here? That big 64. So we paid off 180 with the cash sweep, and we paid it a lot earlier than our scheduled period. Now, you could say, okay, well, if that's paid off, then we should pay off some of our subordinated debt, and we can argue about that. Now, before we do that, let's go to the next one. So the amount drawn here on the revolver is the opening balance. So what we needed to do is, just like in our other case, we needed to draw some money. Now there's a problem here, because this is obviously a mistake when we have an amount drawn that's negative. Now don't fix it here. Don't put some stupid maximum here. The problem is the negatives and the positive. So the amount borrowed, that's going to be a positive number, and the amount repaid is going to be a negative. So we can press an alternate equal here again. Okay, and that's the mistake I made in the file. Now, once we have this, we've kind of fixed that. And the interesting thing here is that we've got a couple of problems. First, in that final period, we better pay it off. And the only other thing is, on that commitment fee, well, that probably shouldn't work. I was wondering if we have to put a little switch on that commitment fee. I don't think we have to. So the amount borrowed is and now this should automatically work. So the amount borrowed is when we have negative cash flow, and the amount repaid is when we have positive cash flow. So let's go and look at that one. So if we go up here, we have a subtotal of cash flow, and if it's negative, we pay it back, and if it's positive, we put a minus right on the beginning. This is Ricardo's. It really has changed my life to put that in. Okay, now here is the problem. The exit, I put add terminal. I'll put add exit proceeds. Now, we should always have a whopping positive cash flow, so in the exit period we should always be able to pay everything off. And what happened here is I did something really bad. I did not add the exit proceeds, or they didn't get added. I won't even blame myself on that one. Okay. So now we have enough, and we pay all the revolver back. So if we had 26 outstanding, we'd pay the whole thing back. And we wouldn't have to do any fancy adjustments for the end of the period. I used to go crazy with all this. I used to say, oh man, but if you do it elegantly with the minimum and maximum, and now use our negative signs on the thing, okay, and then we just pay our interest, and our commitment fee is on the undrawn balance, and this has to be adjusted for quarterly, and I was wrong. Oh, that commitment fee, you see, it does. It just leaves that. I suppose what we should do is just multiply this total commitment by the holding period switch, because you're not going to have a total commitment afterwards, okay? All right, and then just in case we had any defaulted debt, in this case we don't, but we better be careful, because we'll put the defaulted debt as a addition and repayment as a minus. So we'll, oh shoot. Now, why are they calling me at the hotel? Okay, after I got that phone call, what I did is I put an LBO switch here. This just says if it's the LBO period, and then I added factor, so we don't change the history at all. We only change these two assumptions on the margin and the EBITDA scenario. I didn't make it with the other one, but we only change those when in the LBO period. So the reason I had to do that is because if you have a balance sheet, here we had a really flexible balance sheet. We don't want this balance sheet to change in the historic period. We want to always kind of start with the same balance sheet. You could argue maybe you don't, actually. Okay, so that's our kind of starting point. So now we can do a sensitivity analysis. And the reason I think it's kind of nice to do it now is, why don't we I was just kind of, when the phone call happened, I think we were in the debt and the defaulted debt, and we have no defaults. Now I'm going to put an equal sign and go to our, please, I haven't tested this, so if I start swearing, don't get mad. Margin, and let's put our spinner box on this. It's a lot easier to do this, with drop down box, isn't it? Okay, so we'll copy that now. So if we put a much higher cost of goods sold in, I want to try to get a default to occur. Okay, so now we're good. We have a little bit of a default here. Okay, we didn't have enough money to pay back our debt. And what happens is then eventually we repay the default debt after the at the exit period. And of course I needed to have alt equal. I have applied the Ricardo non-positive number convention, which is very good. And then that goes to 0, and then we do have some interest on the defaulted debt. You could even put a default interest, but be very, very careful. That default interest should apply to this debt too. So if you put a higher default interest, then you should say, if this opening balance is greater than 0, we're going to apply it to both. As long as you do it with the opening balance, I don't think you'll have a circular reference. Okay. So then let's do the next one. So and I hope the defaults were all working out. Okay, now here we borrowed some money, draws from our revolving credit, and where did we have a default? So down here we had, I guess, this much left to draw. We still have negative numbers, and so we had to restructure our debt, and then it looks like we couldn't pay it back until here, because we always had negative cash flows. Because if we ever have what we were doing is paying our revolver, borrowing on our revolver, and we couldn't have it. So it's kind of working there. Now, finally, we repay the subordinated debt. And this is kind of bad news in this case, because after we've repaid the senior debt, the only thing left over is this little bit of money, and that means there's no money left for dividends. Our equity IRR is going to be infinitely negative. I don't really know how to measure it, okay? And excuse me, this number has to be the minimum of how much we have, or let's just make sure it's working, or the opening balance of the debt. And as we had to do with the rest of them, and then this is a positive and this is a negative, so we can press alternate enter again. I am really liking this new approach and not putting my positives in numbers. So we're left, essentially this number out here is a default, okay? And just to make the model look better, if we do have a default, we better, I suppose we better multiply this by the holding period switch, so we don't have some lingering old interest payment afterwards, okay? So we're just finished then. Sorry, we just have a default. Suppose you could put a default here too, but that would be messed up. Now, I didn't put a interest income, and I'm not going to put one in, okay? Because Emco, yeah, he told me that that's going to be zero, exactly zero. So if we had some positive cash flow, we're not going to allow a dividend to occur. That would get a little more interesting if we would. So in this first two periods, what we had is we repaid all the debt, and we're going to have to talk about the cash flow sweep. So we paid some of it off with the cash flow sweep. And then, since the cash flow sweep was 50%, which, thankfully, that's just kind of a locked-in number right now. Okay, by the way, this where it says divide by 0, I should be careful and put an if statement and put G81. You just put the bottom in there, okay? And you copy that across. Okay, and then we... so then we're left with positive cash flow at the end. Now what we have to make sure and do is, if we have this cash balance somewhere and we have a default, I want to use this cash balance, and it seemed to be used here. That was good. And if we would have a big positive cash balance, we want to make sure that cash balance is also used in the terminal period, because we're just going to pay that cash right back. And I'm sure I suspect that's going to be a little problem, although it might be. Here I put this not, says if it's not the exit period, just take that additional cash flow, and then the final dividend line goes next. So I think we're kind of okay. Well, how about this? Let's make our margin much smaller. I mean, our costs much smaller. And so our cash going up? I hope. Okay, so if we do this now, if we go to our, let's go to our cash flow analysis. And there, but the only problem here is, did I ever use the cash? If we have a cash balance here at the end, so we had enough cash to pay off all of our subordinated debt in this scenario, and we had some 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 cash left over. Okay, and let's see, and I think this is kind of realistic how you might really do this. Our cash balance has 189 in it, and we should have paid that cash balance down here. So what we really should have done is cash flow. How about we'll who should get it? I think where it says cash used, we can add another line right here where we put that and said we can add one. And what? Yeah, add. Look, this didn't affect the conditional formatting. Cash used in terminal, period. Okay, and that's going to be simply the terminal switch, this one, multiplied by any opening balance of cash that we have. And if we do all the subtotals, this is all about subtotals, really. That's the big deal. It's min, max, and subtotals. And if we use the opening balance, okay, here. Okay, and then we better, on this one, you can almost use this. You can do this and make, is that right? I better be careful. No, that was bad. No, it didn't. It didn't even do it good. Right, that was kind of a dangerous thing to do. Okay, we take the last subtotal, and that's why I'm a great believer in lines here. So now we have an extra amount of cash, and then we have extra amount for the dividends, and this cash balance that where we say less cash used, I guess. This should have been a. Is that right? Is that? See? This adds to the cash flow. Now I'm getting very confused by my positives and negatives. I'll put add cash paid. Okay, and I'm just going to add that now, so we have a little bit of inconsistency now, and maybe that's okay because it's cash and not debt. So that's the cash we take away, and I've got the negative and positive signs. I'm sure there's something I did that's not logical, but okay, so now what should happen is that when we go to that last period, it all goes away. All right, so now we have this this thing, and here's what I'm going to do offline a little bit. First, I'll just describe this. After the operating income analysis in between this, we also need a depreciation and taxes. And since I did that last time, well, it's depreciation and amortization. And for that, let's put an opening balance. We'll put a plant or development cost balance, and we'll put an opening balance and all that. And we have to be really careful on this one. If this is going to be the number you use for tax depreciation, on the profit and loss, this was development capitalized. That number was written up, I believe. Okay. That number was because we did such a fancy thing. We put it here. Now that adjustment, if this is a transaction that is a share exchange, we don't want to write it up. If it isn't, we do write it up. So you need to understand the tax treatment here and be very careful with the modeling, okay? And so if our opening balance, if it's a tax-free exchange, we put it, this closing balance is not from the pro forma this time, okay? Don't over count this. And then the next thing let's do is then we have our fees balance, and we can do the same thing. Okay, we'll just make an opening and closing balance on the fees and amortize the fees. Okay, and we need to put a depreciation expense here, and we need to put a amortization expense here. Okay, and then once we put all of those in on our profit and loss statement, we need to take our EBITDA plus the synergies we get minus, and then why don't we put operating margin or something like that, I don't know, and then we put less depreciation, and be very careful with the assumptions. I'm restating that, and then you put less amortization of the fees. Okay, and you'll put EBIT, and then we take away all of our fees and our interest, and instead of just getting net income, we get earnings before tax, and then we can do our whole NOL balance and add now when you do that, here's another issue. Another issue is we put the opening balance here, we add the net loss or whatever, subtract the NOL used, and we'll use the maximum and minimum for that. Okay, maybe I'll even show it to that when I get down here. And then we get the closing balance. Now this closing balance, if the tax authority was really nice, they'd let you, and maybe some tax lawyer can figure it out, you would take this from the deferred taxes in the other thing. But if it's not, we don't get that opening balance. And in fact, what we should have really done is on this, oh God, luckily I didn't have it. I should have added the deferred taxes down there, shouldn't I? And luckily, and what happened to the equity one? Oh, the equity we take away. On this deferred taxes, you might have another adjustment to get rid of the deferred taxes if the deferred taxes are due to NOLs, and you're not allowed to use the NOL. And then we do EBT after the NOL, and then we put taxes paid. And this time I'm not going to defer the taxes, and we'll just make the net income after the taxes that we paid. And down here, we better, just before the exit proceeds, maybe we put less the taxes we pay. Okay, so, and that's that. And then before we do this, I think it's going to be essential to do a balance sheet. Now, when we do the balance sheet, essentially we can take the titles from right here. We have all the titles just about right, with 2 or 3 exceptions, at least 2. Okay, and one of the exceptions is that we also have some debt out. The revolving debt might be outstanding. Okay, and the other one is that we might have some defaulted debt. And I think that's all. I can't think of any others. Now, all of these ones, just the same way we did it. Well, it's not exactly the same. We can take this one plus the accounts payable. Development capitalized we get from the closing balance. Goodwill we'll just hold flat. Intangibles we'll hold flat. This will be the amortized, unamortized fee balance stuff we have up here. The senior debt, there'll be a closing balance for the senior debt. There'll be a closing balance for the revolver. There'll be a closing balance for the defaulted debt, subordinated debt, and the equity, just like we did before, we'll have an equity balance account. So here's what I'm going to do. That would be too boring to watch, and nobody's still watching this video anyway. Okay, but I'm going to finish this up. I'm gonna finish this up and then come back. And I think I'm going to stop the video because in the very last video we'll put the IRRs on debt and equity. Now, you know, the other thing I'm going to do here to get ready for the IRRs, I'm going to do that a little bit off without showing you on the video because we've done it before a couple of times at least. Now, this is kind of going up here, but this we can make an annual thing, and I think it's important. I think so. I'm not even sure. I was thinking about whether it really is. We'll go over here and use the SUMIF command. So we can take the year of the very first transaction. Let's take the opening balance year, okay? And then we'll this went all the way to 2029. And remember, I was having all that big problem with the shift control R and all that business. And the reason I'm doing this, it's going to be important for us to present the data, and it's going to also be we can compute the IRRs on an annual basis, and then you'll see that the IRRs on an annual basis kind of aren't exactly, there's some compounding effects going on, and that's a way to kind of really check the numbers a little bit, okay? And yes, we'll do it now, and then I'm gonna stop the video now and just it's already an hour long. Oh my god. Okay, and then I'm going to finish this and discuss it for just a minute. Okay, since this is such a long video anyway, I'm going to discuss the depreciation just a minute. This depreciation I took from the standalone case, because if there's a tax-free transaction, you don't get to write it up. But this net plant balance I took from here, and then I just added the capex minus the depreciation. Now, you should be really careful, I suppose, for accounting purposes, and show that there's going to be additional depreciation for book purposes on the write-off, but not tax purposes, creating a deferred tax. Okay? You've got to be really careful with that one. Okay? And let me see. That tax, you should put that deferred tax right on the balance sheet when you put it on when you record the asset, and I'm not going to worry about that much because it's got no cash flow effects. Then the amortization of the fees, if we record that as a debt issuance cost. Now remember, the real important part of this is tax treatment. If the tax, you can write it off immediately. For taxes, you probably should just put it as a immediately write-off, but we put an amortization of, I just used the 20 months down here, the repayment switch. And then on this one, when you use the amortization, take the minimum of the opening net balance so you don't over depreciate it, and then get the accumulated amortization, just add the last one, you get the net amount, and you can make sure that you're not amortizing too much, you stop it in the right place. Okay, that's using the minimum on the amortization against the opening net balance. So those were just a couple of things. Now, once we have those, let's go down into the tax. So I put the depreciation and the amortization here. I took it out of the other category. The opening balance, I hope, is equal to the closing balance. And then we have a net loss. We put a maximum and put a minus of this, or zero. So that whole business, of minus or plus, it just, and then you put another maximum this time, and you take it, if it's positive, put it 0, and then you use the opening balance. That's always our rule. So you cap it at the opening balance. That's what OK said. And then you put the closing balance. I hope I got his name. But plus the loss minus the thing, and then we get our EBT after this, which, remember, we add back the amount we take, we subtract the amount we use, and then our actual taxes we paid are the F4 times the tax rate. Okay, and finally the net income is in this case, I'm not deferring the taxes, so I'm subtracting the taxes paid. I'm not recording a deferred tax account. We did that last time. Okay, you could, if you would make the net income on the taxes book, you'd have to put an extra deferred tax account and all that stuff. Now, I'm going to, again, pause the video and go to the next step. Okay, I'm into the balance sheet now. I made a closing balance on the equity account from the pro forma statement, and then I was completely inconsistent, and I don't care. For the cash account, I had a little bit of an error, because for the cash account where we had our financing, this first number should have come from the balance sheet. Now, we should have done what Stan said, which was make a minimum operating cash balance. So I didn't do that, and I don't know if I'm going to. I should really. Now, for the accounts receivable, I just said, okay, let's just look up on the cash flow statement and take the prior accounts receivable, and this, we had enormous swings in the accounts receivable. That's kind of why we needed that revolver so bad. So it's a good illustration of how a revolver really is for the working capital needs. And then for the development, we just had a closing balance. For the goodwill, I just took the last value, intangibles last value, debt issuance cost last value. And then the very first test is just, let's make sure that this equals the pro forma amount. Okay, you just got the starting point right, at least. That's kind of like our historic balance sheet. Then for all the debt issues, we just go down to the, I'm making this seem so easy, but you know what's going to happen is the balance sheet's not going to balance, and then I'm going to be all crying. Okay, and then for the defaulted debt, you go up here and get the closing balance of the defaulted debt. For the subordinated debt, go up here and get the subordinated debt. And maybe this model looks, too fancy or something. It's not really that fancy. And but you can see the idea. I think if you didn't do it this way, you would have no chance. Really, just no chance. And then let's put our ultimate test. And we're so happy it balanced the very first year. And if it doesn't balance the very first year, you're really screwed, aren't you? Now, you probably have seen errors that I've made. I'm, sure I've made about 1 billion of them. So I'm, as soon as I don't get it to balance right now, I'm going to switch it off. Now we have 1.1. That's not terrible. So we let's go up and see if I can find, maybe there's a 1.1 here. Of course, I can't find it yet. So, there it is, the commitment fee. Of course, we put a commitment fee down here in our income statement, and let's just make absolutely sure we subtracted it. You could argue that we should have put this in a negative sign, although this is how they really do look. And then, where's our commitment fee down here? Do you see our commitment fee? I don't see the damn commitment fee. We didn't put it in the cash flow statement. Okay, and now if you think that this is still going to make it balance, I think you're fooling yourself, but that's really such an exciting thing to do. I'm leaving the video on. Okay, Shift Control R, and then I put it in as a negative like Ricardo told me to. Does it balance? Well, let's go one step. Now, here's why it's probably not going to balance in all the other years. I'm just going to do one at a time. I'm such a coward. 49. Oh, shit. See? I'm not surprised. So now we have to find what happened with our... Oh, well, first of all, we didn't do that. Well, so that's not a big deal. So we have to do that. I balanced one more year. Don't get hopeful, please. Well, I'm going to be brave, okay? And it balanced in all the other years well until the very last year, and there's probably some kind of gain on sale of the equity. Why did the equity go down? Hang on. Assets went down. We have to do something with the sale proceeds. I'm almost going to suggest not doing it for that last year. I don't really care about it because the dividends were so high. That should have been offset by some kind of nominal gain or something. So that's not bad. But then what we really should do is say, what happens if we have some defaulted debt? Am I getting defaulted debt yet? Come on, go up here, find some defaults. Come on, there's some defaulted debt. It's still working. That's pretty good. Okay. So, that's a shock. And, what should I do with this one? This amount of the equity, we should take the... let's take okay. We'll take I'll do something with that. And just take it off after the holding period. Okay. All right. Here, let me just do that. Okay, I think this is enough. I just fixed the conditional formatting, and I just saved it, and it didn't crash Excel. I'm happy about that. And so the next step is I'm going to make instead of a standalone annual where we do this kind of business of putting a quarter, an annual, a quarter, an annual, and we do this all with the match and index and all that stuff. We're going to make an LBO model that takes all of this, does a quarterly and annual. We're going to compute the IRRs on the debt and equity with the cash flows. So the first thing I'll do is put in the cash flows, and then we'll annualize everything, and then I'm gonna stop